to the next topic within PPC. Here we would learn about the scope of PPC, or the areas where you have PPC. Okay, so the first one is with respect to materials. So in order to have a proper production planning and control, you need to see that all your materials, be it your raw materials, your in process inventory, in progress inventory, your finished goods, any component, any part, sub assembly, whatever be the material, they should be available in the right time, at the right place, in the right quantity, and should have the right quality as well. So this is with respect to your materials, that everything, no matter what is the type of material, has to be there in all the right manner, that is right time, right place, right quantity, and so on. Then the methods. Okay, so PPC, like for making this one mouse, there might be some 5 to 6 ways to do it. All right, so you need to evaluate each method and find out which method is most suitable, or which method has, say, the least cost. If you're looking out for the cost factor, you can understand, okay, fine, method B, out of the 5 methods, the second method aims at reducing the cost, and you find that that is the method which would result in a reduction in the cost. You might go for it based on this criteria. Then machines and equipment. So once you've selected the method, you would need a specified machine, right? Not all machines do the same task. There are some for different tasks as well. So based on your requirement, based on the production method that you're going to use, you need to decide which all machines and equipment should be placed. Okay. Install them. Yes, installation costs are also there, but also you need to take care about some money being reserved, or some fund being reserved for the machinery, so that if suppose there's a technical issue or there's a breakdown of the machinery, you need to have some fund to pay for the repairs and maintenance. So machines and equipment also play a very important role in PPC. Any technical issue, or any time the machine isn't working, then you would have a serious problem with it. Then the manpower, whether people are sitting idle or not, whether they are put into some task which is productive in nature. All right, and whether say I have 5 or 6 departments, I should not overstaff the people. That is, I should not assign people who are not even like who are in excess. You don't need so much of people for that particular task, so don't overstock them, because they'll end up sitting idle. And don't understock. Maybe to do a task which normally requires 10 people, you can't employ 5 people to do the task. So you have to see what are the standards, what is the measure, and based on that you'll have to allocate your human people, personnel. Then we'll learn about routing, which is one procedure which we would learn in the subsequent slides. Here you try to find the course of action, or the sequence of operation which is to be followed. Okay, which stage of production comes where, what is the next stage, what is the stage after that. So when you decide to properly arrange your operations so that you get the best output, we call it as routing. Then estimating. Now, like I mentioned, the targets for sales is being given by the sales department, who say that, okay, next month we need to sell 100 units. So the people have to, the production department has to engage its resources, mainly men, machines, and material, so that they can come out with 100 units. All right. So here you're going to estimate what all do you need, what all materials do you need, how should it be effectively employed. You are going to estimate it, and then find out the exact manner to satisfy the sales. Okay, so in order to get the right quantity of goods, you need to understand what is the estimate given by the sales department, based on which you should arrange your facilities so that you are able to make 100 units. All right. Loading and scheduling. Loading is where I decide on whether say, like, I decide to make 100 units. All right, and then I assign the task. I say that to make 100 units, there are 5 stages of production. First stage of production should take care of, like should have at least 6 people working there for that first stage. Second stage, I should have 10 people. Third stage, I should have 12 people. Okay, so when I assign people to different work centers based on my requirement, I call them as loading. All right, or when that is loading men, but when I plan to load the machines, I understand what is the capacity of each machine, and I bring in the material which is to be loaded inside the machines. So that is machine loading. Okay, so and then scheduling is where you understand or you put in paper as to how long would the manufacturing process be, and how what is the start time and end time for each of the stages of production in that one complete production cycle. So for that entire production cycle, you understand what is the total time taken, and then for each element or each stage of production, you ascertain what is the starting time and ending time. This is done so that people don't sit idle. Second, you are able to meet the customer's demand. Work can go as planned. End of the day, you will get your output at the right time. Okay, so in order to ensure all this, we have loading and scheduling. Dispatching is where we plan something. Okay, as part of PPC, we plan how the thing has to be done, and finally when things are initiated, that is you set your machines rolling, you start feeding in your material, and work starts happening in the physical sense, we call it as dispatching is done by giving some instructions or some order so that the production starts. Expediting is where you find out what went wrong, like you compare the actual performance with the standard performance, see what is the difference, find out what is the reason or what is the cause, and take the corrective action. So dispatching is one main procedure which does this. Then expediting, hold on. Okay, sorry about that. So I was explaining about dispatching, where you set your machines into rolling, you make them start the production. You actually make the work, make the thing start. Then was expediting, wherein we find what is the actual performance done, we compare it with the standards, whatever difference is there, we find out why, what is the main reason or what is the cause, and then we take corrective action. Inspection is where your quality control comes into place, wherein you go and check whether at each stage of production you can do an inspection, or you can do it at the end. See whether whatever quality standard the finished product is supposed to maintain, whether it has been maintained or not, whether there are any defects in between, or with respect to machine, whether like maybe the machine in stage 3 has got a technical problem, we'll have to go and check whether there is any problem of that kind. So all this would fall under inspection. Then evaluating. It is very important to evaluate the performance of materials, men and machines. With respect to men, whether they are working as per the norm, whether they are trying to maintain that efficiency. Machines, whether they are able to do the production on a better scale, whether they are able to maintain all the quantity of goods, whether they can produce all the required quantity of goods. Materials, see to it that materials are available all the time. So there is no shortage in material. From the materials point of view, there is no shortage. Your men is not idle, they are working, and your machines are also being utilized to their full capacity. We can say that we are evaluating the performance of men, machines and material. Then the last one is cost control. Yes, it's repeated on and off. It is very hard to reduce the cost. Some of the costs are semi-fixed or fixed. Rather, what you can do is try to control them. You can use methods like inventory control, purchase control, stores control, which would help you, material control, which would help you in having a restriction over the use of many resources, so that you don't it does not lead to any wastage or scrap. Rather, you use every bit of it in a very good manner. All right, so these are the main areas where PPC has a role in it. Okay, Many of the points would be discussed again, but then these are just the general points. You can actually write it on your own. You will have more in your mind to write it on your own, but still think about these points and highlight on those. All right. The next, we talk about certain functions of PPC. We can split it like how we split it earlier, production planning and production control. In production planning, we have four functions. Okay. So the first one is estimating. So your sales forecast or the sales department comes out with a figure saying that we need to sell 50 units per thing. So when you understand like, okay, this is the quantity to be produced. If I have to produce 50 units, what is my cost involved? Okay. So when you formulate something, a document or some record which says that, okay, this is the quantity to be produced for this month, this is the cost we are going to incur. Okay. So here you're trying to estimate how much of resources would be utilized, what would be their cost if we try to produce the number of units which the sales department is asking us to produce. So we understand what is the quantity of goods to be produced. We get this information from the sales department through their forecast, and we also see what is the cost involved. All right, that is estimating. Right. Second one is routing. Here we determine what is the sequence of production, whether stage 1, whether after stage 1 should it be stage 3 or stage 5. No, it should be stage 1, then stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 and stage 5. Okay, no overlapping over there. So when you decide to determine to formulate the sequence of operations from one point to another point, we call it as routing. And the best way to do this function is to prepare a route sheet which tells you, okay, what is the first stage which comes in. They'll give the machine name, this is going to happen and close at this time. And then what is the after first stage, where is it going to go, second stage, and they write all the details. So that is the sheet which they maintain. We call it the route sheet. Okay. And the third one is scheduling. Scheduling is where you try to understand what is the total time taken to manufacture a product. Okay, suppose this manufacturing takes different stages of production. What is the starting and ending time of the first stage? What is the starting and ending time of the second, and so on? So you try to understand what is the total time taken to manufacture the product, and then you decide to understand what does each element or each part of that entire operation, how much time is it taking. That is called as scheduling. Then loading is where you try to convert these schedules into practice. That is, you try to assign the task. If you have got 5 stages, first stage you will allocate certain jobs. We call them as assigning them jobs. By what they mean to say is not just job for people. You assign the human resource, you assign the material, you also assign the machines. So here what happens is, once we get the plan as to how to produce, through estimating, we try to find out which stage comes first, which comes next, and which comes after that through the process of routing. Now you assign a time factor to it. The first stage should take only time from say 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, after which stage 2 should start. That is your scheduling. And loading is where after the timetable has to be is kept ready, you try to get the things, the other facilities in a proper manner. You see to it that the machines which is there for stage 1 of production is available. The human resources who have to operate these machines are also there in the right amount, the right number, and whether materials are being provided, all those. When you try to implement that plan into practice, the initial step in setting up the facility in order to execute this plan, we call it as loading. Okay, it could be machine loading or work center loading, it depends. All right. And then functions of production control. There are two main functions, just two. The other one had four, this has just two. The first one is dispatching. So once you have decided how much we have to produce through the process of estimating, then we go for, I'm repeating this so that you guys don't forget. Okay, and then you decide in what way should the cycle happen, what stage, after what stage should you have the next one. We call this process as routing. Then we fix them a time frame called as scheduling, and finally we load them. That is, we understand that in order to start the production, there are certain machinery and equipment to be required, which is required. So therefore we do things to, we do arrangements to get these machines, humans and materials in place. And finally, when everything is placed, you give them an instruction to start the work. This giving an instruction to set up, start the production activity, we call it as dispatching. So here what happens is, based on our previous plan, we see that we arrange all the machines, and when you have to start your production, dispatching comes into place. Here an instruction or an order is given to the workers or to the machine to start their production. Okay, and expediting, follow up, or progressing, all three are the same thing, wherein we compare the actual work. Finally, when we get the output, we compare the actual work with the standard work. We see what is the difference, we find why is this difference caused, or what is the cause, and then we go and take corrective action. And again we prepare the next plan and implement it in almost the same manner. So these are the 6 steps which is included as a total of functions of production control, but there are certain, each one of them is different. They might sound similar, but no, they are different. So I want you to go through these points and tell me if you have any questions. No problem. It's okay to ask questions. You'll have a lot of questions, but still go through each point and tell me whether you have any questions. Go through as much as you want. Yes, notes would be provided, but it's very important to check on these as well. All right? Okay. So, as per the syllabus, we would be learning about 2 types of functions, which is seen in PPC. One is routing, the other one is scheduling. No matter what you do, you have to learn about these 2, and they do get, they do keep coming in the exams as well. So exam point of view also, this is very important. Okay, so like we discussed, we plan or we place all the operations in a sequence so that we get the desired output at the right time, in the right quantity, right quality, with the least cost. So that is what routing is all about. Okay, so routing can also be said as the one way of finding the best route to manufacture the thing. So in scope of which we just discussed, scope of PPC, after material we had method, wherein we have to choose the best method to do the production. Alright, so here we see to it that the best method is chosen to do the production. Now here what you need to do is, once your factory layout, once all the machines have been arranged, everything is going good, you need to use the same path of procedure like how it is mentioned in the routing document. So routing is where they say, give you a very much rigid, strong production process protocol or schedule, which tells you that this is the way of producing. You cannot go first stage of production and then third stage, come back to second stage. No, you have to go from first, second, third. If you you misarrange any one of them and you do the production in that way, you might not even get the desired output. There would be something wrong with the dimensions. Okay, so routing is where you try to establish what is the path of manufacturing or production. I hope it is clear. Yes. Okay, so there are certain decisions which are to be taken when you talk about routing procedure. First is decision to make or buy. So we have always talked about this concept where an organization can either make some component of their finished product by their own, or they can get it from outside. Whichever is cost friendly, they can go for it. Suppose to make this mouse, the cover is say rupees 300 per piece if I take it from the supplier. But if I do the analysis and I find out, okay, what are the raw materials required to make this top cover, I find that all of them is worth rupees 200. Then I compare, okay, I have to pay rupees 300 to the supplier considering his profit margin for this raw material or this subpart. Okay, but then I just have to do it for 200 per unit in my own facility. So that is where I decide to whether make or buy. If I plan to make, I need to also include those with my stage of production. See, when I have the supplier, maybe I just have to put in all the raw materials and stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 happens. But now if suppose I'm going for a make decision, then the plan has to be changed. Routing procedure would not only have stage 1 to stage 5. What happened before stage 1? What was the procedure taken to produce that small part, which is one part of the finished product? We have to understand whether it would be added onto the routing procedure or not. So the routing procedure is very much dependent on the decision to make or buy. Determine the materials required. What type of materials do you require? What type of standard, right? You will have to ascertain all of them. Is it clear to you? Yes? Okay. Determine the manufacturing operations and their sequence. So just like what exactly you mean by routing, you have to decide which stage or which part of the production should come first, what should follow. Okay, so those have to be considered. Ascertain the lot sizes. So if the sales department is saying 50 units, don't aim at producing 50 units, make it as 60, because you need to be aware somewhere or the other something can go wrong. Okay, rather than spotting, see, the requirement is 50 units, rather than spotting at least 40 defective products in that 50 units batch, it's better to have a backup. You produce 60 units, all right, so the risk of producing ones which with less quality is reduced, because see, you need to plan your lot size so that in case there's an emergency or in case there's a defect, you can make a relatively good reaction towards it. Okay, so here what they mean to say is, even if the sales department says 50 units, don't stop at 50, produce few more, because you need to understand most of your finished products would also have some defective goods in them. All right, then determine the scrap factors. So like it's mentioned, no matter how efficiently you use raw material in your production procedure, it might lead to some sort of scrap or wastage. Okay, even though there's a scrap or wastage, we should set a limit for scrap. It should not go beyond it. If it goes beyond it, it adds on to the cost, to the wastage factor and all of that. So scrap, you need to understand, is one important thing which is there. You cannot simply take it off, right? But you have to set a limit within which your scrap should fall. Like for each department, department A, scrap should be only of this level. It should not go beyond that. Part B, department B, whatever is the scrap level, the limit is set, it should not go beyond that. So this would help you in understanding what is the scrap factor. You will try to find out the cost and you can also reduce it. Cost analysis of the product. Okay, when you have a proper routing procedure in hand, we are able to analyze what is the cost factor all about. In what all ways can we reduce the cost? Okay, if your routing procedure is a very good method, like everything is closer to each other and all that, you can avoid things like material handling, which we discussed earlier, wherein we spend on either equipment or human labor to do the material handling function. So you can save on this cost. So all this routing procedure, if it is really proper, like fully foolproof system, then it is very easy to reduce and control the cost. Then organizational production control forms. So since we are talking about a lot of workers who are engaged in the function, it is very important that they have a record of it. For example, us teachers, when we take the class in college, like from morning till evening, once it is done, we maintain a sort of calendar planner. We should call it as work diary, wherein we write, okay, this day in this class we did this portion. Okay, and even before we start teaching you the subject, we are required to make a lesson plan, which includes like which all days, what all portions are we planning to cover. Whether it happens or not is a different thing, but still these are certain mechanisms which would help you in updating yourself. Every worker gets to update on their progress to the inspection team. Okay, saying that this is our present status and all that. Is it clear to you? I hope you are understanding what is it, because these points are simple, but you can't simply quote it there. You have to understand what is it and then write for your exam. All right. So scheduling, like I mentioned, it is where you try to determine what is the total manufacturing time, and also you try to determine how much time does each part of that entire manufacturing process take. How much does first stage of production take? How much does second stage take? The time has to be well recorded. Okay. Now, the definition is it involves establishing the amount of work to be done and the time that each element of the work will start or the order of work. So, in what exact way should the work happen? Yes, we can derive that concept from routing. What is the entire time to take in the to do the manufacturing? How much? What is start time and end time for each stage of production? So that there's no delay. If stage 2 extends their time, like from 9 to 10, it extends till 10:30, then stage 2 will be affected. Then automatically stage 3, 4, 5, everyone is going to get affected, and you might not get the right output in the right time, end of the day. All right, so that has to be considered. Now, what are the different things which you can use while you do scheduling? First is you can set some performance standards. You can set some standards. Your engineers would help you in doing it, where you can set the standard for the procedure. So if first stage of production takes just 1 hour time, the standard would be 1 hour. Okay. Then we have it as unit of measurement. You can use any sort of units like kgs or grams or whatever in order to understand what is how much of material is being used for that particular process. So unit of measurement helps in determining what exactly or how much is the requirement of one material in a particular thing, and based on that we can prepare a scheduling chart. Unit of loading and scheduling again, which would help you in understanding that in what way can we. So like we discussed, loading is one procedure which would help in feeding the material to the machines, right? You see that, okay, this is how the material or the equipment or the work has to be assigned to each department. And then you see about the scheduling part of it. There are some organizations who change their schedule as per the demand, yes, maybe on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. So based on that, scheduling should be taken care of. Then effective capacity per work center. So each department or each work center, we have to understand what is the effective capacity, okay? How much are they able, what is the maximum they are able to produce and all that. Then extent of rush orders. For example, if there's an increase in demand, all right, and someone comes to the firm and says, okay, we need an urgent requirement of 100 units. So you need to understand how exactly to extend the time. See, now you have to produce more units, which means machines have to run for a longer period of time than what was discussed earlier. So here, extent of rush orders or urgent orders are also important. Then overlapping of operations. Maybe one or two machines would be performing almost the same type of scheduling. So that is also one factor which you have to consider while you set your scheduling. While you decide about your time schedules, in what way should each part of the production happen. Then individual job schedules, how are the job schedules of the employees placed, what is their work timing, what is their rest, what is their idle time, everything has to be ascertained. And loading charts. Now, some machines, they might not be performing just that one task for that particular production line. They might be doing other tasks for other production lines as well. So you need to see whether any work center or any department is not burdened with all those. Okay. It should be as per a very favorable load taking capability, and we have to check that no department or no work center is having a lot of workload to do. So these points, the thing about this routing and scheduling is many of those points aren't important. They are just to tell you how important is scheduling, how important is routing. We learned the procedure of routing, which was a bit more easier to understand than this. But here, these are the different things which you look into with respect to scheduling. So let me repeat if you guys are not clear. Performance standards, those standards which are set in order to meet the requirement of the sales forecast. Okay, and there are certain predetermined standards. We have to check whether the actual production is happening as per those standards. Unit of measurement, most of the raw materials would be measured in terms of weight, like kilograms and grams and all that. Unit of loading and scheduling, whether you are starting the production, what is the starting time, what is the ending time of each stage of production, what time and in what quantity should the material be loaded into the machines, in what way should the people be assigned to the task and all that. Effective capacity per work center, what is the capability or capacity of that particular work center. Extent of rush orders, suppose you have an urgent requirement, how to accommodate with your machines. So that might have an impact, a huge impact on the scheduling, because you have to change the schedule then, right? Then overlapping of operations, we have to check whether there are 2 or 3 machines which are doing the same function. You can either choose to eliminate them, and if they belong to totally different production lines, it is very difficult. Rather, we can just in a way, share it between yourself. You can understand what is your requirement, the other machine can do it. It's all a part and parcel of it. Individual job schedules, where your employees decide, or employees are to have some accountability over the time that they take for their coffee break, for their idle time, for their work also. Okay, and loading charts. So there might be some machines which are performing more than one function, so we have to calculate whether they are having a lot of workload or whether it is a okay permissible limit. So these are the points with respect to PPC. If you have any questions, let me know. Uh, yeah, that is about PPC. So this literally ends production planning and control. So I need you to go through right from the first class onwards regarding this chapter and see whether there's any one tiny point also which you don't get it. Please reach out to me. It's a very important chapter. Okay, these points are important, but normally they don't ask about this inputs of scheduling. So you just need to know what is it all about. I hope you guys understand. Yes? All right. Thank you. Good night.